They push you away, then panic when you actually leave. They reject your love, then desperately search for signs you still care. You think they don't want you. But the truth is more complicated and more painful than you realize. If this feels like I'm reading your mind, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you struggle most with when someone pulls away from you. I read every single comment, and your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Here's what John Bowlby discovered about attachment that will change everything you think you know about rejection. Avoidant people aren't emotionally invincible. They're emotionally terrified. They learned early that love equals pain, that closeness equals abandonment, that vulnerability equals danger. So they built walls not to keep you out, but to keep their own heart from breaking again. But here's where it gets twisted. They need you to keep trying. They need you to prove that you won't leave like everyone else did. Your pursuit becomes their security blanket. Your desperation becomes their validation. They reject you to test if you'll stay. They create distance to see if you'll bridge it. And you do. You chase, you beg, you explain, you prove, you become smaller and smaller, hoping they'll finally let you in. But every time you chase, you confirm their deepest fear, that love is conditional, that people only stay when they want something, that your presence isn't genuine care but desperate need. So they push harder, they become colder, they reject you more intensely, not because they don't want you, but because they're terrified of how much they do. They're addicted to the chaos because chaos feels familiar, peace feels dangerous, love feels like a trap. But watch what happens when you stop chasing, when you stop proving, when you stop explaining yourself into exhaustion. Something in their nervous system breaks. The game they've been playing suddenly has no players. The dance they've choreographed has no partner. Carl Rogers understood something profound about human behavior. We can only receive love at the level we believe we deserve it. Avoidant people don't reject you because you're not enough. They reject you because deep down they don't believe they're enough. They don't believe they deserve consistent, healthy love. So they sabotage it before it can disappoint them. When you step back, when you stop feeding their push-pull dynamic, you force them to confront something they've spent their entire life avoiding, their own fear of abandonment. The very thing they've been protecting against by pushing you away becomes their reality when you finally respect their boundaries. Here's the brutal truth. Your rejection was never about you. It was about their relationship with themselves. It was about wounds so deep they forgot they were wounded. It was about protection mechanisms so strong they became prisons. And here's the liberating truth. You cannot heal someone else's attachment wounds by allowing them to wound you. You cannot prove your worth to someone who doesn't believe in their own. You cannot love someone into loving themselves, but you can love yourself enough to stop accepting crumbs. When you stop chasing, one of two things happens. Either they realize what they've lost and do the internal work necessary to show up differently, or they don't. And both responses give you exactly the information you need. If they come back with genuine change, with therapy, with accountability, with consistent actions that match their words, then maybe there's something to build on. But if they come back with the same patterns, the same excuses, the same emotional unavailability dressed up in temporary effort, then their return is just another form of rejection. The most powerful thing you can do with an avoidant person is become securely attached yourself. Stop making their emotional availability your personal mission. Stop interpreting their fear as your failure. Stop sacrificing your peace for their comfort. Your distance becomes their wake-up call. Your boundaries become their reality check. Your refusal to participate in their chaos becomes their invitation to healing, or their permission to find someone else who will play the game you're no longer willing to play. Either way, you win. Either you get a partner who's done the work to love you properly, or you get your life back from someone who was never ready to share it. They reject you because they fear you. They fear your capacity to see through their walls. They fear your potential to love them despite their wounds. They fear that if they let you in, you'll eventually leave anyway. So they leave first. But when you stop chasing, you're not leaving. You're arriving. You're arriving at self-respect. You're arriving at emotional maturity. You're arriving at the understanding that love isn't supposed to feel like constantly trying to convince someone you're worth loving. Real love doesn't require pursuit. Real love doesn't require proof. Real love doesn't require you to become smaller so someone else can feel bigger. Real love meets you where you are and invites you to grow together, not demands you shrink alone. You've been trained to believe that love is something you earn through suffering. That connection comes through persistence, that if you just love hard enough, patient enough, selfless enough, they'll finally see your worth. But that's not love. That's trauma bonding. That's addiction. That's the echo of every wound that taught you that you have to fight for scraps of affection. Here's what they don't tell you about avoidant attachment. It's not personal, but it becomes personal when you make it your identity. When you start believing that their inability to love openly means you're unlovable. When you start thinking that their fear of intimacy reflects your lack of value. When you start making their emotional limitations evidence of your emotional failures. But listen to me carefully. Their rejection is information, not condemnation. It's data about their capacity, not a verdict on your worth. When someone shows you they can't love you the way you need to be loved, believe them the first time. Don't spend years trying to translate their emotional unavailability into a language that makes sense to your heart. The psychological truth that Alfred Adler revealed is this: we recreate our childhood wounds in our adult relationships, hoping this time we'll get it right. If you were neglected, you'll chase unavailable people. If you were criticized, you'll seek validation from critical people. If you were abandoned, you'll cling to people who threaten to leave. Your attraction to avoidant people isn't random. It's your wounded inner child trying to heal the original rejection. You think if you can just make this emotionally unavailable person choose you, you'll finally prove that you were always worthy of love. But healing doesn't come from external validation. It comes from internal recognition. They push you away because unconsciously they know you're trying to use them as medicine for wounds they didn't create. They can sense your desperation, your need to be chosen, your hunger for proof that you matter. And that energy, that please pick me energy, triggers their deepest fear. That love is always conditional, always agenda-driven, always about what they can provide rather than who they are. So they test you. They withdraw. They become inconsistent. They create chaos to see if you'll stay calm. They reject you to see if you'll respect yourself enough to walk away. And when you don't, when you chase harder, explain more, prove longer, they lose respect for you, not because you're not worthy of respect, but because you're not respecting yourself. The moment you stop chasing is the moment you reclaim your power, not power over them, power over yourself. Power to choose your peace over their chaos. Power to choose your growth over their stagnation. Power to choose your future over their fear. And yes, it will be terrifying. Yes, you'll want to go back. Yes, every part of you will scream that walking away means losing them forever. But here's what you'll discover. You can't lose someone who was never fully available to be had. You can't lose someone who was never fully present to be found. When you step away from the chase, you create space for two miracles. The first miracle is that they might finally confront their own patterns, seek help, do the work, and show up as the person they're capable of being. The second miracle is that you'll discover you don't need them to choose you for you to be whole. Most people who've been trapped in these dynamics fear the second miracle more than the first. They're terrified of discovering that they're complete without the person they've been chasing. They're afraid that if they stop making someone else's love their mission, they'll have to face their own unloved places. But those unloved places, those wounds, those fears, those stories you tell yourself about your worth, they're not permanent. They're not prophecies. They're just old information that needs updating. You are not the child who was rejected. You are not the teenager who was ignored. You are not the young adult who was abandoned. You are someone who deserves love that doesn't require pursuit. You are someone who deserves partnership that doesn't require proof. You are someone who deserves affection that doesn't require you to shrink, perform, or disappear parts of yourself to be acceptable. Stop chasing people who run from love. Start choosing people who run toward it. Start choosing yourself, not as a backup plan, not as a consolation prize, but as the main event. Because you always were.